All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to Shared Space, everybody. I am Laquita Chansey, the founder and director of Baltimore Homes. And today we have a very special guest. Unfortunately, Chap isn't here with us today, guys. He'll be chiming in a little bit later. He is out in these streets communitying like we always are doing. And from what I understand, Chap was out and about when you all crossed paths. Please
Correct.
introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Sounds great. Well, first off, thank you, Laquita, for the opportunity to chat. My name is Donna Ann Ward. I'm a stakeholder, an organizer, and a proud union member. I live in a neighborhood a lot of people in Baltimore haven't heard of, Joseph Lee.
Hmm.
It's also called the A through K's if you're really old school Baltimore, because our streets are in alphabetical order. We're only 11 blocks long and 2 blocks deep. We run from A to K. And more recently, we've been called Bayview because we abut Johns Hopkins Bayview.
Okay.
So we have a situation over here, and it's a situation that a lot of Baltimoreans have faced. Um, Yard 56 broke ground and opened actually during the pandemic. It's right across the street from Johns Hopkins Bayview, so it is the western anchor on Joseph Lee's Eastern Avenue corridor. And it's been fabulous. It took the old Pemco manufacturing site, 200,000 square feet of toxic land, and they cleaned it up and they
Hmm.
gave us shops and a locally owned bank and a streets market and really brought some visibility to the neighborhood, some much needed jobs, and some consumer spending.
Right.
On the other end, our eastern border, are two of only three mid-century modern commercial buildings left in Baltimore City.
Okay.
They're the United Steelworkers Union Hall and the AFL-CIO Union Hall, and
Okay.
they are fabulous. And they were purchased by a company whose plan is to tear them down and do something that I didn't know the term. It's called a pad site lease. They tear it down, they pour concrete, and they put something up like a Burger King or a Marshall's or a Big and Tall or something that really, um, for me, doesn't really scream value.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and what we would like to see, Baltimore has this great spotty track record of taking some historical buildings like Creative Alliance, the 1840s ballroom,
Hmm.
even Center Stage, taking a building that had a former use, preserving it and transforming it and making it a cultural hub.
Right.
Right. And when you look at something like Creative Alliance just spent years fundraising to build a little extension across the street because they started out as the Patterson Movie Theater. Well, the Patterson movie theater isn't designed for musical performances or
Right.
paintings or gathering. It's designed to sit in the dark and eat popcorn and watch a movie.
Right.
These buildings are made. They are made for gathering. They
Right.
are made for housing. They're made for studios. They're
Hmm.
made for outdoor activity in the parking lot. They are made to do what unions do, to elevate the lives of those who enter the doors through education, activity, and consumption.
Hmm.
And so we are very lucky. We have Zeke Cohen in he's our city council guy.
Right. Because you know Caesar as well, correct?
Absolutely. I have eaten many a panini at Romero's Cafe. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about Joseph Lee. It's highly walkable. There's no
Hmm.
place to walk to. We have Yard 56 on our western border. We feel if we can get some sort of cultural and performance spaces on our eastern border, um, as many neighborhoods in Baltimore have, we have some dubious business establishments on our Eastern Avenue corridor. And we feel if we have a developer really have vision and just a little out of the box thinking,
Right.
that will have other investors come.
Right.
Um, get a real bookstore, get a coffee shop, get a restaurant that serves liquor, get a real toy store. Um, get businesses that aren't multi-billion-dollar chains, that aren't fast food, that aren't sort of mall shops. So that's the hope. But, we also understand we can't tell a business owner or a property owner what to do with their property. So,
No, but at the same time, collectively, the community should have some sort of say, some sort of conversation with these developers. Did the developers ever take the time to like have a meeting with the community association or anything of that nature?
um, is there a profanity bar on this show? Is there a ban on profanity on this show?
We like to keep it light, but every now and again, the passion of it all, it just comes out. So we'll
Well, when I
respect.
first saw the for sale signs go up, I moved into this neighborhood in 2019. And let
Okay.
me just say, both my parents were raised in the city. My dad grew up in Skulltown, which you got to be real old school to know where that is. And my mom grew up on the Pimlico side of Mount Washington.
Mhm.
3 out of my 4 grandparents lived in the city. I ran in the city from the time I was in high school. I did everything in the city as a kid. We were city rats. And so when I moved back to Baltimore, I intentionally purchased in the city. I
Right.
love Baltimore and I love old Baltimore. And I'm a Schaefer baby. I'm a Tommy D'Alessandro and a Mimi DiPietro. And, I believe in Baltimore. I love it.
Right.
So when I first saw the for sale signs go up in 2019, I called the realtor and he said, let me get you in touch with these people. And then he called back. He said, it's fallen apart. It fell through. Um, my parents died. I got derailed. It turned into a pandemic and I lost track. And then I saw the pad site lease signs go up and I Googled what that was. And I thought, oh no, God, no. And I called back and I went on SDAT. I found out who bought it. I called and I got the gatekeeper and I talked to him the same way I'm talking to you. I said, I'm a stakeholder in the neighborhood. I've done some organizing. I don't know if you're aware that you've bought these really iconic historic buildings and they have this long history and bands used to perform in them in the 90s. And he went off the rails. Don't
In
tell
what
me what
way?
to do. You have no idea. We're not going to listen to you. We don't care what you want. And in the end, he said, you can go fuck yourself and this fucking conversation's over. And he hung up with me. And I thought, wow, that is really unfortunate. That is very unfortunate that a developer would look at Baltimore's history. United Steelworkers in the 70s, black steelworkers laid it all on the line to desegregate USW, and they were successful.
Right.
Women they did gender trailblazing in the 70s.
Right.
Baltimore Museum of Industry just did the Women of Steel exhibit.
Yeah.
When they merged with the American Federation of Labor, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, AFL-CIO, it's the largest federation of unions in the country.
Right.
I mean, they have cash assets that top $200 million. They are, if you work with them instead of against them, you can renovate those buildings into something really special. And he told me that, and I immediately sent him an email apologizing for making him mad and offending him. And then I sent an email to Zeke Cohen, and I sent to the CHAP office, and I reached out to Caesar, and I just got on the ball. And I thought, we're going to get left in the dust. We're going to get left in the dust on this. And it's like a lot of neighborhoods.
Right. Yeah. It's the bar for Baltimore. Unfortunately, there isn't enough ownership. There isn't enough stewardship. Like, as far as I'm concerned, with Baltimore City, like almost gatekeeping, that gentrification isn't going to be the thing that changes all these 15,000 vacants. And in your neighborhood, you're not even really particularly worried about that. That's not what you all I mean, I've been over there and it's nothing like West Baltimore, right?
Not
So
at all.
so you all already have the assets over there. So we know why they're after those spaces. He gave you a hard time. Zeke is now involved. Caesar knows about it. Is he being any nicer? Is there a new gatekeeper?
I haven't gone back to him. What I have done is taken the temperature and seen what other people think. We're in touch with United Steelworkers. Their members, local 9477, were devastated when they closed.
Hmm.
They don't want them torn down. A lot of them didn't know that it had been sold. They were unaware that there were plans to tear them down. When you look at what we face, and I actually lived in West Baltimore. I lived on Old Frederick Avenue,
Yeah.
west of Holland's Market.
Right. You're
Um,
familiar.
oh, when the renovation happened, I worked at the Cultured Pearl.
Hmm.
I knew people who bought the dollar houses. I'm Mary Pat Clark fan. I grew up with that vision of Baltimore.
Right.
That with vision, with economic investment, a rising tide lifts all boats. What
Right.
we have in Joseph Lee, we had a lot of the Baltimore immigration story, a lot of Greeks, a lot of Poles, a lot of Germans, a lot of Italians, a lot of Ukrainians, and then they all moved out. They moved to Caves Valley, they moved to Towson, they moved to Delaney Valley, and they have turned these huge row homes. The average Baltimore row house is 13 feet wide. Our babies were built during World War II. They're 15 feet wide. I mean, you need a Sherman tank to take these things down. They're incredibly well built. They've been turned into 3-unit apartment buildings. They're grandfathered in. They don't have emergency exits on the second floor. People on the second floor have to walk their trash downstairs and around to the alley. Why? Because they are recently arrived Latino immigrants. A lot of these people are paying cash. I would suspect a lot of these people are undocumented. They don't know their rights. I wouldn't exactly call them slum landlords, but I can say if I rented
They're
one of
taking
these,
advantage.
hmm?
They're definitely taking advantage, if nothing else.
Right.
Even if it's not a slum, you're being
Right.
Predatory, right?
Right.
Like, let's be real.
Yeah, they'd hear from me a lot if I was a tenant. Let's put it that way. And people, they don't, and it's a great neighborhood. So as a result, it's a lot of people going to bed early, getting up early, working hard, getting their kids to school,
Yeah.
being social with family. But there's no place to go in Joseph Lee. You can walk. We have 5 fields at the northern border of Joseph Lee. There's not a dog park in it. There's not a swimming pool in it. There's a rec center that is, sometimes open, sometimes not. There's a tiny playground.
Right.
We've got 11 blocks along Eastern Avenue. We've got Michael's Steakhouse, been there for 50, 60 years. They're still holding the line. We've got a post office. We've got a great hole in the wall Chinese. We've got a great socially aware tattoo parlor.
Okay.
We've got some very dubious businesses. We just had a liquor store get their permit pulled because they were in violation. We've got an appliance store. I don't know what they're selling. I don't really think it's appliances. So no one is investing in us because we are seen as typical East Baltimore, stereotypical East Baltimore, high school education, don't move out of the neighborhood, blue collar worker, none of which is bad. None of that is bad. Dollars spend as dollars spend. Money is money and people are people. But then you have this large immigrant population, and it's not Patterson Park. You will hear things in Joseph Lee that I personally am offended by. And then we also have a problem with inclusion. We abut Johns Hopkins Hospital, Bayview campus. The neighborhood association has given Hopkins nothing to invest in. There has been not a single project of any scope to allow Hopkins to participate in our neighborhood. And we house their people. We give them free parking because there's no permit parking when you get to a certain point in the neighborhood. We feed them. Home Depot. The Home Depot on Eastern Avenue is the busiest Home Depot in the state of Maryland. We have given them no project to be involved with. So when I look at those buildings, Patterson High just had a multi-million-dollar renovation, and they have a tech program. Home Depot has an apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a federal empowerment zone.
Mm-hmm.
We are in a culturally historic underdeveloped zone. So if you have a developer, an investor who can do a little out of the box thinking, employ locally, take advantage of the tax offsets, use Home Depot, use Johns Hopkins Hospital, you could renovate those buildings in a heartbeat. You could have a cultural center. We are in between 95 and 895. People would roll down from New York and Philly, up from Annapolis and DC. The neighborhood of Dundalk was built by United Steelworkers. and Gina Shock, the
Mhm.
drummer for the legendary all-female band The Go-Go's, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame members. Grew up in Dundalk. She's Dundalk born and raised. We'd like to have her name on the side of a music building. Why not? Why not us?
Mhm.
Why not this neighborhood? So I have vision, but what we need signatures. In order to have the stop demolition order hold up, we need signatures. So at the bottom of my screen, historic Joseph Lee at outlook.com. If your listeners send an email saying I, with their address and zip code,
Mhm.
oppose the demolition of Steelworkers Hall and support the preservation of Steelworkers Hall and send it. We need 100 signatures by Friday. And I believe you have somebody who wanted to say something. Didn't something pop up?
Yeah, someone was mentioning Live Tech and a company called Billy. What was it? It was Baker Tilly. I almost said flip the letters around. But Baker Tilly, there's a developer program that and they're funding Black developers in underrepresented areas. It looks like in the
Hmm.
Midwest, though, we are definitely in the East Coast. So I guess we could definitely take a look at that. But for you, like your point is the 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 property, the asset has already been acquired by someone who we didn't want to acquire it, right? So you're getting these
Well, I
signatures to, they're going to go to DHCD, they're going to stop. Who?
there's a stop demolition order in place.
Okay.
When I talked to CHAP, the Historic Architectural Preservation, Cultural and Historic Architectural Preservation Office of Baltimore City, I said, these are mid-century modern buildings and they're enormous. They still have the original windows. They have the original lettering. For God's sake, they have parking. They've got a 3-story parking structure next to the AFL-CIO, and they've got a 250 car parking lot next to the USW. I said, you got to be kidding me that you want to that somebody wants to tear these down. And he said, I think that there's only one other mid-century modern commercial building in the city. It's 1 Charles Center, the Mies van der Rohe, which, destruction works in your favor. It's right next to the hole that used to be the Mechanic Theater,
Mhm.
one of Baltimore's big missteps, letting someone tear down that historic building that now sits as a hole in the middle of the city because it's
Right.
tied up in red tape.
Right.
So when I called over to CHAP, he said, let me take a look at it. And he emailed me back in 2 days. He said, you're right. You're right. They are mid-century modern and they are within the city limits. They are at the city limit. And he said, yeah, we'll do this. We'll give it to you. We'll give you the stop demolition order. So now my job is to get signatures, to get people to say, don't tear them down. We'll figure out what we want to do, but don't tear them down. They're not going to be happy. And, I shouldn't say
Who's not going to be happy? The developers?
the owner, and I shouldn't say that because I didn't get to actually speak to the owner
Mm-hmm.
of the development company. I talked to the gatekeeper. And when I
Right.
called CHAP and I conveyed my conversation, I said, was it me? I sent him an apology email. He said, what's his name? I told him his name. He said, nah. He said, the guy's a notorious hothead. I said, oh, did he talk that way to you? He said, no, I'm the city office. He would never talk to me that way. I can cause him problems. But he said he's a hothead. So I feel if we could actually talk to the actual owner, we
Right.
might be able to have a conversation.
Right. Because at the end of the day, like they purchased that building
For nothing.
profit. You know what I mean?
Nothing.
Like,
They
so
paid they paid 1,250,000 for one of them, and they paid 450,000 for the other. Those buildings sit on 85,000 square feet.
wow.
The buildings themselves, if I have my numbers right, are 33,000 square feet. The AFL-CIO has this classic mid-century modern structure. The second and third floors are floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides. It's perfect for a museum. Perfect. And it's huge, and it has parking. The United Steelworkers Union seats about 500, and it's built
Mm-hmm.
for assemblies. We could have jazz, little tables with candles and cocktail service. We could have David Byrne. David Byrne went to the Maryland Institute. We could have David Byrne as a company. I mean, we could get international acts. We wouldn't have to use Ticketron. And if we have things on the Eastern Avenue corridor,
Hmm.
we can open the box office early and people can pull in, park their cars, walk up to Eastern Avenue, grab a meal, buy some vintage clothing, pick up some vinyl, a bookstore. If they want to
The
really
whole
think that,
vision. Right, right.
sure. Put a jumbotron in the parking lot and let people stream the concert through their Wi-Fi. It'd be like the
Hmm.
old drive-in, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you would increase your ticket sales without putting any wear or tear on your building. I mean, if you think outside the box.
I mean, but it's really not outside the box, if you ask me. Like, it's
Right.
just like not developing to gentrify an area. You're actually developing to make it more equitable. So you're looking at the area and you're seeing what assets are missing. What does this community lack that we can bring here and still make money? Like it's a two-way street. Like these services and products and locations are needed for communities to thrive. So if the community is telling you, "Hey, bro, you just bought something that you don't need to demolish. You
Right.
don't need to make it a pad site, whatever." You see what I'm like?
I
We're saving
do.
you money. Like just
Right.
give not even give the property back because you bought it to make a profit. Like even
Yeah.
still at some point maybe a new developer that is willing to turn it into what you all see, because to be completely honest they're probably not even of the skill set to do what you're interested in. Their skill set is knocking stuff down and laying concrete, like probably not even in their realm.
Well, what
So
was interesting was this gatekeeper that I talked to,
mhm,
because I said, and I tried to be reasonable. I mean, there's no need to, if we're going to work together, let's work together. I said, I lived over in West Baltimore during the Dollar House renovation. And he went off, he said, I live over there now. I'm on the neighborhood board. I said, then you understand what happened to West Baltimore when people invested in it and what happened when they stopped investing in it.
mhm,
It's right there. And it made no difference to him. But I pulled some numbers because the other thing is, yeah, you'll make money off of Burger King. You'll make money off of Marshalls. You'll make money off of Big and Tall or whatever. But so I pulled numbers just from last year. During a pandemic, the American Visionary Art Museum had 30,000 visitors
mhm.
during a pandemic. Ram's Head Tavern, $5.1 million. Uh, the Hippodrome, 2,275. They made 2,275,000. Chesapeake Shakespeare, 5 million. Center Stage, 11.5 million. The BMA, 6 million. There is money in art. And the other thing
Oh yeah,
about this is, you and I both know, anybody who's been around Baltimore, anybody who's been in an urban environment knows artists not only bring money, they bring solution.
for sure.
And Baltimore is in desperate need of solution. They are in
Absolutely.
desperate need of social outreach, of economic opportunity, education, elevation, equity. They are in desperate need of having individuals and businesses come in and say, you are of value. We see you as having value. Where would you rather work? The Hippodrome or Burger King,
Right.
right?
Right.
What
I
would
mean,
you
it comes
rather
with
have in your
options.
neighborhood? Right.
I mean, but to that point, like just giving people options, like just having the option to say, I do want to work at Burger King or I do want to work at Hippodrome. Maybe Burger King's commute is more convenient. I don't know. All things are needed, but what needs to happen is developers really do need to listen to community members, because at the same time, to your point, what if it's a case where this demolition is done, right? And then the community doesn't accept it. So if you all aren't going to patronize it, that means that folks that aren't from the community are going to have to come to it in order for it to thrive. And quite frankly, communities can make that not happen. So, like, let's work together so that it's beneficial to you, it's beneficial to us. You're not, first of all, demolishing buildings causes pollution. these buildings were created so long ago. You're releasing lead, asbestos. So those are the complaints that we have in West Baltimore when the solution
Right.
is always to demolish something. And it's
Right.
like, no, this this house has value. Just because you don't see the value doesn't mean that no one can see the value. Like the community knew what was there before it turned into this blight, vacancy, or whatever it is that you think that you see. But to your point, like I really do believe that if more developers listen to community members, they would realize that you're not asking for something that is out of the box. You're just asking for something that the community actually needs. I don't think that that's unreasonable. And coming to a place like Baltimore, where we have this historical practice of redlining and zoning practices that have been forever like ingrained in racism
Mhm.
and just nonsense. Like if we don't develop equitably, like Baltimore is going to continue to lose population, which continues to add to the lack of taxes being paid and schools thriving and neighborhoods thriving. So I really do hope that folks hear us. Send your email to historicjosephlee@outlook.com. And then
Mhm.
what was the template?
You want
Like
I, with your name and your address, oppose the demolition of United Steelworkers building and support the preservation. Anything else you want to say, add to it. And the thing is, about these buildings, they're in amazing condition. Most of Almost all the windows are intact. The roof is intact. They're not missing bricks. The lettering is intact. The original doors are intact. They're
so
in great shape. It would cost them a fortune to do asbestos abatement in order to tear them down.
properly, right. So was this were these buildings owned by the city or
No, they were so the United States Steelworker, USW, United Steelworkers Hall, was built in 1942.
right?
Um, Steel production, Bethlehem Steel.
Right.
So backing it off, Bethlehem Steel
That's
made
me.
Baltimore the largest steel producer in the world.
Right.
It
And that's
took
when we had a population of 1.2 million. Now, folks, we have less than 700,000. So
And
boom.
it elevated people's lives. If
Yeah.
you worked for Bethlehem Steel, you had healthcare, you had pension, you could
Right.
buy a house, you could buy a car, you could go
Right.
on vacation. And then it merged. In the 50s, they erected the AFL-CIO building when United Steelworkers merged with them. They're another enormous building. And we there's money. That's the thing. Because the buildings are in such great shape, and
Hmm.
because our vision is to use them sort of the way they already are,
Hmm.
finances would more than likely be the smallest obstacle, which in development is a rare thing.
Right.
We are in touch with MCB Real Estate, the people who did Yard 56.
Okay.
And we are reaching out to Seawall, the developers who overhauled
Okay.
Lexington Market,
Right.
because they understand
Hmm.
what it means to work with a neighborhood and to make development in line with the neighborhood.
Right. And what community asks, and understanding that you should have community listening sessions and you should have informed consent. Like, don't just have people agreeing to things that they don't understand. Allow folks to ask
Mm.
questions. Show me a display. Like, let me see visually, like, what you have in mind. Like, let me give some feedback. So, yes, they're great. They're great with that. But yes.
And I got nothing against pad site. I have nothing. Love Dunkin'. I do love Burger King's fries. I'm a big fan. And I'm a big fan of that Impossible Whopper. But the thing with these buildings are, they're one of a kind, and
Right.
they represent a time in American history. Let's face it. If America had not gotten into World War II, there'd be a whole lot more people who didn't make it out,
Hmm.
and the chances of us having won World War II would be diminished. So it's not only a tip of the hat to when America's values were really, really in play. It's also it's a tip of the hat to how Baltimoreans had their lives elevated. Entire neighborhoods were built. The historic Turner Station neighborhood was built by United Steelworkers to house African-American steelworkers.
Mhm.
Turner Station's still a great neighborhood. It's still got great businesses, a really high home ownership rate. It's got low crime. It's clean streets. It's a great neighborhood.
Right.
Dundalk, Graceland Park, Edgemere, all built by United Steelworkers. And now Sparrows Point, where the actual mill was, the steel mill, is making wind energy. They've just hired 500 new people. Is 5,000 the same as their 30? Is 500 the same as their 30,000 at the height? No, but
No,
it's a
but it's a
start.
start,
It's a start.
right?
And you can build a Burger King anywhere. You can build a Burger King. And somebody said, I'd really like a Marshalls. I said, why don't they put it in East Point Mall? East Point Mall is flailing. Why do we have to tear down an
Right.
irreplaceable, iconic building?
More importantly, like preserve the
Right.
history, like respect
Right.
the history, respect,
Right.
if nothing else, respect the architecture that doesn't exist
Right.
anywhere else, right? Like,
Exactly.
come on. All of these things are just like so plain and like obvious to me. It's baffling that developers can still just come in, gentrify a neighborhood. It's really like, you know what though? I keep saying that it surprises me, but it's very much the American way. Like it's colonization all over again. It's just in a smaller
It
scale.
depends. It depends on who you're talking to. You know,
Ridiculous.
and I think I grew up, like I said, during the Schaefer era. My dad helped start Baltimore neighborhood basketball. If any of your listeners are old like me, it was called Midnight Basketball. We went into poor neighborhoods, historically Black neighborhoods, disenfranchised, wrecking parks, opened the courts at 11 p.m. on Saturday night, hour warm up, midnight came, you had a scoring time and 2 refs, and you had a real basketball game. And the stands were packed. They were packed with people who had something to walk to in their neighborhood to see people they knew doing something fun for free. So I grew up with that idea of service and investing in Baltimore.
Right.
And, I was very proud of the city because so many parts of the city are really well run, and other parts of the city, I look at the leadership and think, do you not know where you live? Do you not understand the city that you govern and the people?
They don't care.
Or they don't get it. I mean, they're just incredibly
They don't
disconnected.
care because, quite frankly, like the money that comes into Baltimore goes to the white L, and as long as that continues to happen, like you're putting your money where your interests are, and if you continue to leave West Baltimore and the rest of the Black Butterfly out of development, then you're saying we don't want these areas to be populated. We're not ready to fix the blight or the streets or the school or the transportation or the jobs, or the list goes on. It's all these like community health risks that create people that come out of these health risks, and they're not full, they're not whole. We need to repair the whole community. Do you all have a grocery store like
We
within that?
lost to Shoppers, which I love cronuts. We lost to Shoppers, and now we have a Hispanic market, which, Hispanic markets are great for fresh meat. They're great for fresh food, fruits and vegetables. They're great for that. A really good price point. The thing with Joseph Lee is it's phenomenally white and phenomenally Latino,
Mhm.
but it tends to trend towards low income or lower middle class.
Okay.
One car family homes, lots of people carpooling or on the bus, lots of people walking, lots of people biking, which is great for the environment. It's exactly what you want. Not a lot of college education, not a lot of disposable income, but there's
Right.
also not a lot of crime, and
Right.
there's not a lot of blight. So it's this unique situation where we're disenfranchised because we're not college educated with
Right.
cars and vacation homes, and
Right. But then you
also
also
because
can't,
they're
you're also
immigrants,
not doing awful enough to have blight every other block. It
but also because we have immigrants. And we have, as you have a lot of in Baltimore, we have absentee landlords.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they get letters from me. They certainly get letters from me. You've got 7 people living in this house. Can you please get them more than 1 trash can? But what we need political will.
Yeah.
And if we can get another cultural center that isn't the Civic Center. And I mean, I grew up going to the Civic Center. We used to go to the Baltimore Clippers games when Baltimore had an ice hockey
Mhm.
team. Where do you park? Parking is phenomenally expensive. Or you take the light rail. Well, that means you're coming in from, Mount Washington or Owings Mills. You're coming from a place where you already have a car. This would be a unique situation in that it's easy to get to. It's right off of Eastern Avenue, and it's right off of two major highways. It is where the city ends. They are these beacons at the end of Baltimore City, the entrance to Dundalk, the neighborhood they built. And I will say this. When I was growing up, Dundalk was an all-white neighborhood. And a lot of these Latinos who were buying houses are buying in Dundalk. So the landscape over here is changing. Things are changing. We are getting more diversity. And culture and artists bring diversity. They bring open minds. They bring new ideas. And the way to really fight the racism is just outnumber them. Patterson Park is great. I love Patterson Park. I go there all the time. I love the diversity. I love the helping spirit. I love the welcome mat to the new neighbor, the immigrant, the disabled, the low income, but it's got crime. People are getting jumped in the park. People are getting their cars broken into. You don't have that here. Partly because we don't really have anything to steal, but that's a different thing. It's also because the entire western boundary is the Southeast District Police Station.
Right.
You can't get out on the west side. The northern boundary are the 5 fields of Joseph Lee. You can't get out on the northern side.
Yeah, it's not ideal for criminal behavior.
You got to be a special kind of stupid to do some ripping and running when the entire western boundary is the Southeast District Police Station.
Right.
But we have problems like any other low income and mixed income neighborhood. We have domestic violence. We have neglect. We have hungry children. We have rodents. We have people who aren't educated on how to use 311, what their rights are. And for me, it's a multi-pronged approach. We get a more healthy, thriving, higher participation in our neighborhood association, which is totally on board with this project. We get business owners involved. They're totally on board with this project.
Right.
And then we get the artists.
Right.
We get the performers. And you always have wealthy white people. They love to say, money doesn't solve problems. It's like, well, let's find out.
Right. Give us money and we'll decide if it solves our problems or not. Right.
It doesn't hurt the problem. Let's put it that way. So I would love to see these buildings preserved. I would love to see a music venue. I would love to see a real art. American Visionary Art Museum does a tremendous amount of outreach.
Yeah.
And the kinetic sculpture race was started by AVAM to raise awareness of what they do. And it has now become an iconic event in Baltimore City.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody. Here's what happens in this neighborhood. Directly across the street from United Steelworkers Hall and AFL-CIO Hall was this octagonal glass building built in the 50s. It was fabulous. It was called the Circle Barbecue. And it was almost a circle. It was octagonal. It was all glass, floor to ceiling glass, had a huge parking lot. And they used to drag race up and down Dundalk Avenue. It's a slight hill from Eastern Avenue down to Kane Street. And people would hang out at the Circle Barbecue for burgers and milkshakes and stuff. And kitty corner from it, across the street from the USW and the AFL-CIO, is a Dunkin'. So people start breaking into this boarded up Circle Barbecue building, and I track down the owners and I call them up and I say, hey, I'm really sorry. I want to let you know you have some squatters in your building. She said, okay, well, send somebody out. They board up the windows.
Right.
They break them down. They pull a truck in. They fill it up with trash. They light the truck on fire. I call her again. I say, you've got a problem up here. It's abandoned. Would you be willing to sell it to me? Would you be willing to sell it to the neighborhood association? She said, oh, let me talk to the owners. I said, no offense, but how long have you been working for them? She said, 25 years. I said, they own the Dunkin' across the street, right? She said, they do. These are legacy kids. These are 2 Greektown Greeks. Their father was the donut king of Baltimore. They inherit a business. They open a Dunkin' across the street from the AFL-CIO and USW. They buy the Circle Barbecue building and do nothing with it. After about 6 months of this breaking in, tapping into the electrical panel, they say, we're going to tear it down. I said, please don't tear it down. Please, please make it a cultural center, make it a visitor center, make
Mhm.
it a farm to table, sell it to us. Please sell it to the neighborhood.
Mhm.
They pulled the card that every developer in Baltimore will pull. Oh, it has asbestos. I said, you give me a month. I said, it's an 1,100 square foot building and it has glass walls. How much asbestos could be in it, bro? Like it's only
What are we talking about? Right.
right, like the ceiling. It has asbestos. I said, I can get you federal money. They tore it down. And do you know what they built? A Dunkin'. They built
Are
a
you
Dunkin'
serious?
Donuts across the street from their Dunkin' Donuts, which means they're probably going to tear down their other Dunkin' Donuts, which was built in 1969. So this is the mentality that property owners have when they look at Joseph Lee. It's a low income neighborhood. It's got some janky businesses on Eastern. Who
Right.
cares? We'll just do something fast and easy. And I got nothing against fast and easy. Believe me, I'm as busy and as penny pinching as the next person on your show. But you tore down a 1950 building.
Unnecessarily. Like that cost, not only does it cost, but it's hazardous. Like it's so many bad reasons. There are not enough good reasons to demolish. Like
And
just
I didn't see a single asbestos abatement truck when they demolished it.
right, of
But
course
we were
not.
so concerned with having the building where people would work with asbestos.
Right.
But you weren't concerned at all about those of us who have to breathe in the air when you tear it down and it all goes up in smoke. That is the mentality that we work against. So
Yeah.
we need these signatures. We need 100 signatures by Friday to historic Joseph Lee at outlook.com. I oppose the demolition of the USW and AFL-CIO buildings, and I support transformation. It is, I mean, can you imagine if we had two buildings in East Baltimore that not only employed locally,
Mhm.
provided artist housing, provided
Mhm.
workshops, music for kids, classical music, jazz, dance, tap, ballet, hip hop, Broadway, jazz, and
Mhm.
brought in 5 million, even the low end of those numbers I read off, even if each of them brought in 5 million, $10 million a year in 21224.
Yeah.
You could do a lot with that.
No one would complain.
You could do a
No.
lot. And if someone would have that political will and that vision,
Mhm.
investors would buy those dubious businesses on Eastern Avenue. And
So
housing prices are up. You can still buy a house in this neighborhood for about $225,000. And they're big. They're 1,800 square feet. They have parking, they have little yards, tons of kids. Kids play in the alley. I put out a chalk bucket in the summer, and the alleys are all chalked up. They're jumping rope. They're putting out their
right.
little blow up pools. They run back and forth in the front yards. It is still a family neighborhood. It is still a neighborhood where people talk to their neighbors.
Right.
We don't have block parties, but people definitely we have porch parties. Um,
Right. Yeah, I've been out there a couple of times doing some stuff at Caesar's restaurant. We
right,
give out produce out there. Folks will come and there'll be clothing and
right.
just folks gathering. We often have our bread coin meetings out there. Like
Well, right on.
it's a great neighborhood and
Right.
it's really cute. Like you said, a lot of
Mhm,
play fields, a lot of space for kids to run and jump and do what kids
mhm.
do. It's pretty nice over there. So let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of the Neighborhood Design Center?
I have not.
So they are an organization that may be able to at least help with the vision that you have to put it Neighborhood Design Center, and they are, I believe they're a nonprofit. And if they're not a nonprofit, they at least get volunteers to help other organizations plan architecture, design, landscaping, whatever it is that you all, that the community needs because it's for the community. And I'm thinking if you already have a vision, not that it would be the permanent thing, but so many people lack vision that if you had something on paper, you
Sure, I
maybe
have
would,
it.
garner a little more support and
I
a
have
little
it. And we have
approval.
We have resident support. We have stakeholder support. We need developer support. We need other business owners. We're really hoping that MCB Real Estate that did Yard 56, and we owe a huge debt of gratitude to them. They really they really did us a solid with their design. And, we've got an independent bank. Fulton Bank is over there. We have a street
Yeah.
market. We have a lot of employment they employed from the neighborhood. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to them. So we're really hoping that
I'm sorry,
MCB
aren't there still empty spaces over there too, though? Is
uh,
everything occupied now?
not quite, and they're building the second phase. And the second phase is really going to blow this neighborhood out of the water because it's going to be professional offices with housing above it. And when those offices open, doctors and nurses and researchers and phlebotomists and your techs, they're going to want to live in a neighborhood where they can walk to work, where
Right.
they can ride a bike to work. And that is our neighborhood.
Mhm.
And so why not? I mean, they bought those two buildings, the USW and the AFL-CIO. They bought one for $1.25 million, and they bought the other for $450,000. They paid $450,000
A song and a dance.
for 28,000 square feet on a 50,000 square foot lot.
And I wonder, like, as much as they're talking about knocking stuff down and making it a site pad, like, if you could get businesses in there just as it is, could paying a lease satisfy them while the back part is worked out so that the community can take back ownership? You
I
know
mean,
what
if
I
we
mean?
didn't want it, we could do a makerspace with markets. We could do a makerspace in the AFL-CIO. The first floor does not have windows; it's dark, so we could do a makerspace there. And then you have these second and third floor to ceiling windows, great vista of the city, beautiful place to sit in a room and eat product that's made on your first floor. Juices, charcuterie, cheeses, breads, preserves, what have you, the maker market, maker at the bottom, market at the top. You could have a restaurant bar on the third floor. It's like the Revival Hotel
A couple of
on the
different,
western side of the monument.
yeah, and
Up in Mount
having
Vernon.
that mixed use space is
I mean, it's
necessary for
fabulous.
those collective communities. But Jason is saying, he's like, I'm not a researcher, a scientist, or a doctor. Are there going to be housing options for regular folks in that?
You have to bear in mind, these are commercial buildings and they were built as union halls. So
No,
there are
I see.
offices. There are offices on the floors above that
Okay.
absolutely could be housing for seniors, housing for artists. But we don't have a housing crisis over here, and
Right.
it is affordable housing.
Mhm.
An apartment over here would run you between 800 and 1,000,
Mhm.
and they're not small. And that usually includes utilities, and it's free parking, and we're on bus lines.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, it's an affordable neighborhood. We don't have the issues that West Baltimore has. It's
Right.
what we have is we have a lack of vision. But no, they're not. Think of like a school auditorium with offices above it. They're union halls.
Mhm.
They are meant to have people in there gathering, looking at
Mhm.
something, listening to something, voting on something. They had dances, they had dinners, they had that sort of thing. So it would be hard to use it to its fullest for housing. If you can park 250 cars in the parking lot and the building it doesn't have 250 apartments, you're
Yeah.
looking at and again, we don't have a housing crisis over here. But I will say it's a very white neighborhood. And I hear things over here. I lived in Los Angeles for 20 years and I just forgot. I forgot about the racism in Baltimore. I came back and I thought, I don't know why you think those
You
things.
know what's
You definitely
interesting?
shouldn't say those things. And you shouldn't say
So
that to
many
me.
people don't even recognize that Baltimore is like so racist. They like think because it's like so many black folks and so many white folks, and then we have other immigrants, and then we have
Right,
folks who are of Latin descent, and then we
right.
like yes, we're a melting pot, but racism still exists. Like it's still very much systemic in the way that Baltimore is. Folks live, folks maybe not work so much anymore,
I
but
think some neighborhoods are melting pot. I think some neighborhoods are what they now call a salad bowl. We're all together, but we're separate. You're a red pepper, I'm a piece of lettuce. And you have that over here. And for me, always, always the way forward is through art. It's through art.
Yeah.
Everywhere the artists go, you
Yes.
know,
Right.
people,
Ideas, vision, like you said,
well,
it
the
all
underdogs, the
follows.
outsiders, the political, the first thing fascists do when they take over, they shut down newspapers and
Right.
they put all the artists in prison. You know, the artists are the original LGBTQ, the original people of color, the original island of misfit toys. We said
Absolutely.
things and did things and performed things and painted things and wrote things that they really didn't want us to do. And so that for me is the way out. And you know, once that happens, once the finger is out of the dam there, I think that
Mhm.
diversity will naturally follow.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
is an uphill battle here
it
because
is.
of the Steelworkers Hall,
Right, and
because of
like
the
you
union.
said, it's already like a very white neighborhood, and so being inclusive is almost like, well, what power do we lose? And it's like there's no power shift here. Like the community is the power, and we have to recognize that collectively. So we have about 3 minutes or so. So one more time,
Historic Joseph Lee at outlook.com. You just want to send an email that says, your name and your address, because we need to know where you live. So oppose the demolition of, you can say USW, and support preservation. And anything else you want to say, we're happy to hear it.
signed, sealed, and delivered. I
You
love
can
it.
forward it and we'll send you a thank you. And we're not going to sell your information. We're not going to contact you. We're going to leave you be. We're going to collect your name and we're going to use it to get something good done in Baltimore.
And then, like you said,
I'm getting all choked up,
only
girl.
need 100, but let's aim for 200. Like,
Oh,
let's
let's aim for 1,000.
flood this mailbox. Everybody send it in, tell a friend to tell a friend. Because the
That's
sooner
right.
you get to 100, the sooner you can move forward on
That's
stopping
right.
that developer from
That's right.
colonizing those two buildings. Those buildings are not for them, it's for the
That's right.
community. What is wrong
That's
with
right.
folks? We can't keep doing that. Like,
That's
the
right.
community already knows what they need. So they should have started with asking the community, what should we do for
Well, a lot, and I will say that you know, you and I are aligned on that. But when you're
most developers
undocumented,
don't
I've
care.
been an immigrant. I have lived abroad and been an immigrant. And
Mhm.
you know, not a lot of immigrants are willing to speak up sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
especially if they're undocumented. You know,
Right.
the nail that sticks out gets hammered.
Right.
And a
It's
lot of
another
times
system you can
you're just trying to get her done. You know, you're just trying to get things paid and get money sent home and get the kids to school. And you ain't got time. You know, like ain't nobody got time to be signing petitions and people don't put their names on things. So we are relying on people like your audience who
yeah.
understand the value of preservation and transformation and quit erasing history. Just cut it. Cut
Right.
it out.
It's not necessary. It's so weird. So we're gonna wrap up. I don't wanna
Well, thank you so much. Great interviews. Just confirmed everything I already knew. And folks like Antero. Oh, Platilla,
yeah,
where
not in
about?
my neighborhood.
Where do you live?
I don't know. Where did he live, Jason? Can you answer where he lived specifically? He wrote about all of Baltimore. And then
Walk with
we
the
have a
doc.
week. I'll tell you about that later. We have a weekly wellness walk. There we go, not my neighborhood. We have a weekly wellness walk
Right.
at Lake Montebello
Oh
every
yeah.
Sunday at 9 a.m.
Okay.
How much time do we
And I
have?
bring the cutest dog in the world because I have him.
You absolutely can bring the cutest dog in the world, and we hope to have you back. So,
Thank you.
if you just stay on, once we wrap up, I can give you the details for Walk with the
That's,
Doc. And folks,
thank
we'll be back
you.
next Monday, 7 o'clock, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for coming out. God bless and good night.
All right. You take care.